Shalom, this is Levi Shore. Welcome back to Sweet and Good Torah. All right, we have an amazing one today. We're going to learn about Mordechai and Moshiach ben Yosef. We're going to learn about the great power of the Taanit Esther, the Fast of Esther, Queen Esther. We're going to learn about Iran's nuclear program, and we're going to learn about the golden donkey. What's distracting the Jewish people today? We're dancing around the golden donkey, unfortunately. All right, so let's dive right in. All right, so during the days of the Persian Empire, Haman, who was our enemy, our ancient enemy from Amalek. Amalek is the grandson of Esav. And Amalek, we've seen them raise their heads many times in Jewish history. When we came out of Egypt, Amalek is called Reshis Goyim, the first of the nations, because after the world was terrified of Hashem's power and the Eser Makos, the 10 plagues Hashem put onto Egypt, and the splitting, the Kriyas Yamsuf, the miracle, the splitting the Red Sea, Amalek came and waged a war against the Jewish people and cooled down. It says like the nation of Amalek, they jumped into boiling water and they cooled down the temperature of the fear of Hashem. And they did that, so the other nations wouldn't be afraid of us and Hashem. And we've seen them in the days of the Persian Empire, the wicked Haman, who tried to kill all the Jewish people. And unfortunately, we saw them again in the 20th century, the wicked Nazis in Germany. All right, so during the days of the Persian Empire, so King Achashverosh, the Persian Empire was in its golden age, its powerful age. It's really the silver age, because the golden head was the Babylonian Empire in the vision of Daniel, and the arms of silver were the Empire of Persia and Media, and he ruled 127 countries. And Haman, the wicked Amaleki, he paid Achashverosh, he paid him 10,000 silver talents. And it says in the Art Scroll Megillah that this is the value of 24 million ounces of gold. I looked it up today. As of today, March 20th, 2024. Let's see, it's the 10th of Adar, 5784. Gold, an ounce of gold is worth $24.94. So that would bring the value of what Haman paid to Achashverosh to kill all the Jewish people. He paid $598,560,000, so somewhat over half of $500 million. Okay, where are we today? There's a new Purim story that's unfolding before our eyes. We don't fully understand all the players yet, but what's very disturbing is in the ancient world is Haman had paid over $500 million to kill all the Jews. We see a very strange thing from President Biden. And over the last few months, he's paid $100 billion to Iran. He's released money that was sanctioned during the Trump administration. So let me bring this article up on the screen here. And let me see. And so even after 3 U.S. soldiers were killed, and it's really a shame. Let me bring this article up. So let me see, on January, I believe it was January the 28th of the year 2024, there was 3 U.S. soldiers were killed in a military outpost, a U.S. military outpost in Jordan, and there was 30 other soldiers that were injured. Their names of the U.S. soldiers that were killed was Sergeant William Rivers. He was 46 years old. He was from Carrollton, Georgia. Specialist Kennedy Sanders was 24 years old from Waycross, Georgia. And Specialist Brianna Moffett, 23 years old from Savannah, Georgia. Not unheard of, we see that after the killing of 3 U.S. soldiers and the wounding of 30 soldiers, which was an act of war, we see inexplicably in the last couple of weeks that Biden's released another $10 billion to Iran. And it says here in this article, I believe it's from the New York Post. Let me see if I can find it here. New York Post. This article was on March 14th, 2024, written by Richard Goldberg. It says Biden continues Iran's access to $10 billion just weeks after its proxy killed 3 American soldiers. We'll read a little bit of the article. Just 6 weeks after an Iran-backed drone strike killed 3 American soldiers in Jordan, President Biden has approved a sanctions waiver giving Tehran continued access to more than $10 billion, money it can use to import goods and repay debts, free up $10 billion elsewhere to spend on terrorism, missiles, nuclear weapons, and the repression of Iranian women. The Senate is sitting on a bill that would lock down the money, and Republicans should do whatever it takes to force an up or down vote. Thursday isn't the first time Biden has granted Iran massive sanctions relief. The White House first opened spigots of money last summer after it struck a secret accord with Iran, brokered by Oman, reported by every major newspaper in the country, and to this day never acknowledged by the administration. The United States freed up cash for Iran's use from previously inaccessible bank accounts and gave China a green light to import as much Iranian oil as Beijing desired. In exchange, Iran simply agreed not to enrich uranium above the 90% weapons grade threshold. All right, so just to be clear, as I've been teaching my physics class recently, for a nuclear reactor, a peaceful nuclear reactor, you only need to enrich uranium up to about 3%. I believe there are some times they enrich it up to 20%. Anything above 3%, it becomes pretty apparent that it's being used for, nuclear weapons. And anything above 20% is for sure they're only using it for weapons grade uranium. If you're not familiar with what enrichment means, it means simply increasing the percentage of U-235, of uranium-235, which can undergo a fission reaction, meaning splitting the atom, creating a chain reaction, creating a big nuclear explosion. And U-238 is when, what's called, we're not going to go so much into details. Sorry. Let me bring up another article here. Let's see where Iran, the Persian Empire, the modern Persian Empire, let's see where their nuclear program is today. Let me bring up this other article here. And we'll see where Iran's nuclear program is. So this is an article from the AP, the Associated Press. This was put out on February 26, 2024 by Stephanie Lichtenstein. And it says here from Vienna, Iran has further increased its total stockpile of uranium, according to a report by the UN nuclear watchdog seen by the Associated Press on Monday, and it continues to bar the agency's most seasoned inspectors from monitoring its nuclear program. The International Atomic Agency also said in a second confidential report distributed to member states that Tehran made no progress in explaining the presence of man-made uranium particles found at 2 locations. The IAEA estimated in its quarterly report that as of February the 10th, Iran's total enrichment uranium stockpile was at 12,182 pounds, an increase of 2,289 pounds since the last quarterly report in November 2023. It also said, according to the assessment, Iran has an estimated 267.8 pounds of uranium enriched up to 60% purity. This is way beyond anything used in a peaceful nuclear reactor. This is obviously to get it up to 90% for weapons grade uranium, which represents a decrease in 6.8 or 14.9 pounds since the last report in November 2023. It's not easy to read the news. I really appreciate the people in the news now. So the decrease is the result of Iran having dilated some of its 60% enriched uranium in recent weeks with lower grade material. According to the IAEA's definition, around 92.5 pounds of uranium enriched to 60% is the amount at which creating one atomic weapon is theoretically possible. The 60% purity is just a short technical step away from weapons grade levels of 90%. All right, so we see that Iran is real close. I think the article goes on to say that they have enough material now they could possibly create 3 nuclear warheads. So their breakout time would be extremely quick now. They've been working on hypersonic missiles, ballistic missile delivery systems. So Iran's ready to go. All right, so what does this all mean? So when you see at least the new Achashverosh and the Ayatollah Khamenei, and it's crazy stuff. I think as of now, Iran, I don't know the exact number, but I think they've attacked U.S. troops over 200 times, and the Biden administration has had, I think, 4 or 5 very weak responses where they alerted the Iranians, and they just hit, like, supposedly weapon depots. Who knows what they actually hit? They hit something, there have been some attacks back by, I believe, U.S. and British forces on the Houthis in Yemen. We'll talk about all the Iranian proxies. Okay, so let's go into the Iranian proxies. So these are groups that fight on behalf of Iran. So we have Hamas in Gaza, unfortunately, became apparent on the Shabbos of Simchas Torah on October the 10th. The horrible Hamas massacre they perpetrated on Israel. They killed over, I think, 1,200 Israelis, Jewish people in Israel. And their plan, I believe, was called the Al-Aqsa flood. Their plan was to go across the whole central region of Israel into Jerusalem, slaughtering and raping everyone in Jerusalem up to the Temple Mount, up to the Har HaBayis. And Baruch Hashem, like it was horrible tragedy, but it could have been much, much worse of what they were planning. Iran also has Hezbollah in Lebanon, and it's very scary. They're poised a massive invasion of the northern Israel. And it says in the last Mishnah in Masechta Sota, and one of the conditions before the coming of Mashiach will be Hagalil Yecharav, the Galilee, the northern region of Israel, will be completely destroyed. And it's scary that we are right on the brink of that happening with a Hezbollah invasion. The Iranian, the Revolutionary Guard, they themselves are in Syria working in concert with Russia. And after the Syrian civil war, it's basically Russia and Iran running Syria. They have a proxy, Khatib, Hezbollah in Iraq. I believe they were responsible for some of the attack on these American soldiers in Jordan. And then the Houthis in Yemen. And they've been attacking the shipping lanes through I believe, the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea. And they've been majorly interrupting international commerce. And it's a wonder that we're not in a world war already. All right, so we're going to see something interesting. We're going to take a look back in history, and we're going to see something fascinating. My son says sometimes I sound like Professor Binns from Hogwarts. Hopefully I don't. We're tying in history and Torah, and it's going to be very interesting if you stick around. All right, so the original Persian Gulf War, so I don't know if you remember or not, but Saddam Hussein, he was the dictator of Iraq, and he fancied himself like a Gilgul, like a reincarnation of the Nebuchadnezzar, who we'll learn about shortly. And the first Persian Gulf War, it's very interesting. It started with the invasion of Iraq into Kuwait, a rich Gulf state. And he invaded on January 17th, 1991. Now, this was the second day of Shavat, 57-51. It was Parsha Bo. And if you remember, the Americans, their invasion, well, not invasion, but to get Kuwait, I mean, to get Iraq out of Kuwait, it began the war. That the president at the time was President George Herbert Walker Bush. He put together a massive coalition of European nations, some Arab nations. Saudi Arabia, I believe, was one of the nations that fought in the coalition. And this began as we said, on January the 1st, 1991. It ended with the liberation of Kuwait. Kuwait was freed. Now, it was kind of like mysterious that President Bush did not give the go-ahead to General Schwarzkopf to continue the invasion into Baghdad and uproot Saddam Hussein, but it just abruptly ended with the liberation of Kuwait. That was on February 28th, 1991, which, fascinatingly enough, was the 14th of Adar. It was Purim. It ended mysteriously on Purim of the year 57-51. It was Parsha Ki Sisa. Okay, so we're going to fast forward a little bit. So then after 9/11, after the horrible destruction of the Twin Towers in 2001, September 11, 2001, Congress authorized the invasion of Iraq. So it's called, I believe, the Iraq War. It was the USA. I believe there was some allies, mainly the U.S., against Iraq. And it began on March 20th. March 20th, here we are again, March 20th of 2003. That was the 16th of Adar, so that was the day after Shushan Purim. I have seen things where these dates were slightly different, where the Persian Gulf War ended on Taanit Esther, the 13th of Adar, and this war started on Purim or Shushan Purim. I don't know. So here, the modern dates that I saw today, they're saying it's the 16th of Adar. Shani, so it was an Adar Shani, was also a leap year in 2003, which is interesting. It was the year 5763, Parsha Zav. There's great significance to all this. We're not going to go into right now because we're going to get back to Purim. And the total war lasted 8 years, 8 months, and 26 days. It ended on December 15th, 2011. This is already now during the Biden administration, and it's fascinating This all began with the invasion of Kuwait of Saddam Hussein, and this is fascinating. You're talking about the coincidences of history. Now, President Barack Hussein Obama, he ended the war, and he ended it on the 19th of Kislev, 5772, Parsha Vayeshev. That was 6 days before Hanukkah. We have here some kind of connection of Purim and Hanukkah. But what was the significance of all this? This brought the USA, this brought America into the Middle East in a big way. And this was, the start of the creation of massive American military bases all over the Middle East. And America became like the dominant player, the lone superpower, and the main influence now on the Middle East. Okay, so what caused the Gezerah? What caused the Gezerah from Hashem? It says in Megillah Esther, it says in the Gemara of Megillah, it says that anytime Megillah Esther, anytime it says Melech Achashverosh, it's talking about King Achashverosh. But if the Megillah just says Melech, king, it's also referring to the Melech Malachi HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem. It's referring to the King of Kings, Hashem. So why did Hashem put this Gezerah that he wanted to kill all the Jewish people? Why did he allow Achashverosh and Haman to put out the decree to kill all the Jewish people on the 13th of Adar? So Achashverosh was celebrating, and he threw a party for 180 days, and he put on the big day kahuna, he put on the outfit of the Kohen Gadol, and he was celebrating that he thought this prophecy of Yirmiyah Hanavi, of Jeremiah the prophet, wasn't going to come true. If you want to look it up, it's in Yirmiyahu, it's in Jeremiah 25, and it's Pesukim verses 11 and 12. So it says, this entire land will be a ruin and a desolation, and these nations will serve the king of Babylonian for 70 years. So Nebuchadnezzar, who eventually will destroy the first temple, the temple built, the Beis HaMikdash built by Shlomo HaMelech, by King Solomon, and Nebuchadnezzar conquered Israel, destroyed the temple, and he exiled in different stages the kings of Jerusalem. And it started a count in this prophecy, in this Nevuah of 70 years, where the Jewish people then be freed after 70 years. And then it says in the next pasuk, it says, then upon the completion of 70 years, I will make an account of their sin for the land of the Kashtim, the Chaldeans, that's another name for the Babylonians, and I will make it into an eternal desolation. Now, what's fascinating is in the ancient world, I believe one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world were the hanging gardens of Babylon. Babylon, or it's in now modern day Iraq, is in between the great rivers, the Euphrates and the Tigris, and it was called, if you learned it in history, it was called the Fertile Crescent. And back in the ancient world, it was one of the most fertile, beautiful places in the ancient world. It was green and lush. It was a garden, and in between these 2 mighty rivers, and the famous hanging gardens of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar's city. This was a wonder. But now, if you look at modern day Iraq, it's desolate. It's just a desert country. It's not the great fertile country it was. And we can see that Hashem gave Nebuchadnezzar the power to destroy the Beis HaMikdash, the first temple, Solomon's temple, King Solomon's temple, the home for Hashem, the home for the Shekinah Hashem. But then Iraq is no longer the blessed nation anymore, and it's kind of a cursed desert country right now. All right, so Achashverosh, he was celebrating, and in his calculation, he miscalculated the 70 years, and he was celebrating that Hashem would not redeem the Jewish people, and there would be no rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash. And to prove this point, he was wearing the outfit of the Kohen Gadol. He was wearing the outfit of the high priest, the descendants of Aaron HaKohen, the descendants of Aaron, the brother of Moses, that they wore in the temple. And he was celebrating that there would be no temple, Chas v'shalom, and there would be no redemption for the Jewish people. Now, he had miscalculated the 70 years. Before him, also, at the end of the Babylonian Empire, Belshazzar, he miscalculated the 70 years, and he also put on the outfit of the Kohen Gadol, the big day kahuna, and he was celebrating. And it's the famous scene in Sefer Daniel, in the book of Daniel, where the hand is writing on the wall that the Babylonian Empire will be no more. And that very night, Darius Hamadai, the Mede, Darius begins now the Persian Empire, and Belshazzar and the Babylonian Empire were conquered that very night. And now also Achashverosh was celebrating, and it says, it asked the famous question of Chazal, why wasn't Achashverosh punished that very night, just like Belshazzar he really should be, for the desecration of wearing the big day kahuna, and he threw this massive feast for 80 days, and every day he would show off 6 treasures from the temple taken from the Beis HaMikdash, and the treasures were taken by Nebuchadnezzar, and now his granddaughter was Queen Vashti, the wife of Achashverosh. Queen Vashti was the granddaughter, possibly great-granddaughter of Nebuchadnezzar, and just like Belshazzar miscalculated, Achashverosh also miscalculated the 70 years. So all the food and the wine that were served at this 180-day party was kosher, but Mordechai, the Gadol Ador, the leader of the Jewish people, the great Talmid Chacham, he told the Jewish people not to go. Don't go to this party. Don't celebrate, that Hashem won't redeem you. What do we have any business going to this party? Unfortunately, the Jewish people didn't listen, and they went to this great feast. I don't know if the Jews went all 80 days. Maybe when they got a little sense of what was going on, they didn't want to celebrate for 180 days that they would never be redeemed, and we would never go back to Jerusalem, to Eretz Yisrael, to the land of Israel, and Chas v'shalom, that we would never have a temple. But this is what the evil Achashverosh was celebrating. So after the decree went out, and they sent the messengers to all the countries to inform the members of 127 countries that on the 13th of Adar, there was a decree to kill all the Jewish people. Men, women, children, the whole Jewish people, a complete genocide was supposed to take place. That was the wicked plan of Achashverosh and Haman. So Mordechai, he immediately put on sackcloth and ashes, and he led the Jewish people in doing Teshuvah, and we would return to Hashem, and we would, to make up for this horrible affair of going to the party and celebrating that Hashem would not redeem us. So in the future, Purim, I don't think we've seen the full greatness of Purim. We had this great salvation in the days of the Persian Empire over 2,000, I think somewhere around like 2,500 years ago or so, maybe a little less than that. But in the future, Moshiach ben Yosef will also play the role of Mordechai HaYehudi, and with the help of Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, they will lead the Jewish people back to do Teshuvah and return them to Hashem. And we will be Hashem's people, and the world will know that we've never stopped being Hashem's people, but the world will know that we're Hashem's people. Now, why, what's the connection? Mordechai was from the tribe of Binyamin, and the first Mashiach ben Yosef, is from the tribe of Yosef, from Joseph. Now, Yosef and Binyamin were the 2 sons of Rachel and Yaakov, of Rachel and Jacob. And there's a connection there of the sons of Rachel, the sons of Rachel. And the Arizal says there's this great power that we don't even fully appreciate the great power of Purim yet. And he says that Yom Kippur, the holy day of Yom Kippur, is only it's only Purim. It's only like Purim. That meaning that Purim is really the holier day. It's crazy. I mean, Yom Kippur, we fast. It's the mitzvah of fasting. And we daven, 24 hours to Hashem, and we're like malachim, we're like angels. We don't have any food. We don't drink. And we're living a spiritual life. But the simcha, the joy of Purim can take us to an even higher level. And the Purim party, the sending the mishloach manos, the gifts to our friends and family, giving, the most important thing is the gifts to the Evyonim, the gifts to the poor, giving tzedakah on Purim, and all these great, and the mitzvah of listening to the Megillas Esther, and then the special Suda, special party we have on Purim, and all these mitzvahs on Purim, they can take us to a higher level than even Yom Kippur itself. It's hard to believe. All right, so we're going to see, bring up the Gemara Megillah here. I'm going to see something really fascinating. Let me bring this up here. So it says, Vayasar HaMelech es tabaito. And then it says, the king removed his ring. This is referring to when King Achashverosh, when he removed his signet ring and gave it to Haman, and gave Haman permission to kill all the Jews. We can see something incredible about this. So it says, Amar Rebbe Abba Bar Kahana. So Rebbe Abba Bar Kahana, he says, Gedola Hasaras Tabas Yoser Me Arbayim Ushemona Nevim Vesheva Nevios. He says, greater was King Achashverosh removing his signet ring and giving it to Haman than even the 48 prophets, the 48 Nevi'im that are mentioned in Tanakh, and the 7 prophetesses. And one of the Nevi'as is Esther herself, Esther Hamalka. Shanice Nabu, Lahen Yisrael. When they prophesied to the Jewish people, the fear of when King Achashverosh gave this ring to Haman was greater. And we took it more to heart than all the rebuke, all the muster we got from the prophets and the prophetesses. Sorry if I'm butchering the word. Shekulan lo hechazirum lemutav. That they were unable to return the Jewish people to the right way, to good. Ve'ilu hasaras tabas hechazirasan lemutav. But when King Achashverosh took off that ring, and then we did Teshuvah. Then we did real Teshuvah. All right, so let's go back here. So we getting a sense here, there's some special thing, some power to the month of Adar, and especially in Adar Sheni, the holy month we're in now. B'ezrat Hashem, I'm going to do a special video just about the month of Adar Sheni and the great power of Adar Sheni. But the fear of that caused the Jewish people to do Teshuvah, and it says that that caused us to fully accept the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral Torah. Now, we've had a jarring event like this recently. On the horrible massacre on Shabbos of Simchas Torah of October the 7th, I believe this started the new Purim process. Even though we saw before, as I just said, this process has been slowly unfolding, even back to the days of President Bush and Saddam Hussein, drawing America in, the overthrow of a wicked king in Iraq. We see that something's happening, even though this process is slowly unfolding, but I believe this process is beginning to speed up. And so let's go forward. So what are we, so this, something jarred us. It was jarring on October the 7th, and Jews all around the world felt it. We felt a yira. And this started a process, B'ezrat Hashem, of great Teshuvah, the Jewish people returning. So what's misleading us today? What is the Feast of Achashverosh? What is misleading us today? And I'd say the thing that's holding a lot of Jewish people back from the Torah is they're dancing around the golden donkey. And what's the golden donkey? It's almost this bizarre worship, political worship of the Democrats. And I'm going to be honest, and there's other Jews that are dancing around the golden elephant of the Republicans. It seems to be almost like a worship of politicians. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. And if we want to be really truthful, maybe that golden elephant is maybe even like the golden Trump, the golden Donald Trump, because he's kind of taken over the golden elephant. And I want to be fair. I mean, Donald Trump, he's one of the most interesting presidents in the history of the United States in a lot of ways. I mean, his daughter, Ivanka, is a Gioris, the only first daughter in the history of the United States who's Jewish, and her husband, Jared Kushner, is Jewish. All very strange. I mean, Donald Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem. Many presidents promised this, none did it. He declared the Golan Heights part of Israel. He cut off funding from the Palestinian terrorist groups. He took out General Soleimani from Iran, a very wicked general. And he put severe sanctions on Iran to try to stop them from acquiring nuclear weapons. But yet he's despised and hated by the establishment, and they're going through any length to uproot him. I don't know. But I also going to tell you that Trump's also a mystery to me, because there's also strange things that I see that Donald Trump does too. He seems to have a hard time denouncing anti-Semites, and this seems to be a problem on both the right and the left. The left, they don't want to denounce, the anti-Semites in the squad, and the right doesn't want to, denounce the alt-right anti-Semites on their side, but alt-right, alt-left, they're all anti-Semites. And but it seems like we're really misled. We're misled by this. And this, and the golden donkey, they preach this bizarre atheist religion, and the Enlightenment's been going on in a long time. I mean, the Enlightenment affected us in, I think, in 1656 with the Cherem of Baruch Spinoza, and the ideas of like atheism and all these crazy, and it's even worse now. The atheism has gone even into like, Satanism now, where people actually worship the Satan, the Yetzer Hara itself, the Malach appointed over evil. It's just bizarre. And I feel like this is what's holding us back. This is our new Feast of Achashverosh, the golden donkey and the golden elephant. This is some of the things that are holding the Jewish people back from the Torah and the mitzvos, and the Teshuvah that needs to happen. And this is what Moshiach ben Yosef and Moshiach ben David are going to lead us back to, away from the golden, away from the Avodah Zarah, the idol worship of the golden donkey and the golden elephant, and back to Hashem and back to his Torah and his mitzvos. Now, Queen Esther, the power of the Taanit Esther. And we're having the fast tomorrow. The Taanit Esther is on Thursday tomorrow. And B'ezrat Hashem, if Jews can do this, the more Jews that fast tomorrow, it's going to be a very powerful thing. And if not that, at least if every Jew could celebrate Purim this year, it will have powerful effects Purim's this Sunday. It starts Motzi Shabbos, starts on Saturday night. But Queen Esther, before she went to see Achashverosh, she asked all the Jews to fast for her. She asked them all to fast on the 13th, of the 14th and the 15th of Nisan. Now, the 15th of Nisan is the first day of Pesach, of Passover. So this is an interesting thing. Now, Queen Esther, she invites Achashverosh and Haman to these wine feasts. But what were these two wine feasts that she really invited them to? To the Seder. Queen Esther laid out the 4 cups of wine. Maybe she said, oh, in the second cup, we take out these 10 drops, like the plagues in Egypt. We take out the 10 drops. And she invited him the first night to the first Seder. And then she said, all I want. And Achashverosh says, what is your request? And she says, all I want is you to come back to the second wine feast. Why two? Because in Chutz La'aretz, outside of Israel, in Persia, in Iran, we have 2 Seders. And then she denounced the evil Haman. And then the very gallows that Haman wished to hang the holy Mordechai Yehudi on, Haman himself was hung and defeated, and the evil Amalek and his 10 sons were defeated. And we saw a weird parallel and an echo of this in World War II. And there was the 10, and then there was the 10, Nazis that were killed during the Nuremberg trials. And I believe one of them, so there was also the daughter, I believe you may say, oh, there was 11, but I believe one of them was a cross-dresser, and that corresponds to Haman's daughter who was killed. It's all very strange stuff. But our ancient enemy, Amalek, and Purim is the downfall of Amalek. And one day, Bezrat Hashem, we'll see the complete downfall of all the neo-Nazis, all the Amalekis, and we'll see the end of Nazism in the world. Now, what's interesting is all these events led to then Daryavesh ben Esther, Esther's son, King Daryavesh, King Darius, and he allowed Ezra and Nehemiah was a descendant of David HaMelech, of King David. And here we start to see, and what do? They rebuilt the second Beis HaMikdash. And here in the events of Purim, we're going to have Bezrat Hashem soon. Maybe we see the events unfolding. We see the nuclear Iran. We see the new Persian Empire and the same events. But I believe this is all leading to the revelation of Moshiach ben Yosef and Moshiach ben David and the rebuilding of the third Beis HaMikdash, the one that will never be destroyed, and the redemption of the Jewish people after this long Golus Edom, the Roman exile that's lasted so far 2,024 years. May we see the end. May there be Or V'Simcha for Yehudim. May there be light, the light of the Torah, the Or Torah, and Simcha, and great happiness that fills all the Jewish people on this Purim. And may we see soon the coming of Mashiach, the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash, and Hashem return the Shekinah to where it belongs on the Arna Kodesh in the Holy of the Holies. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope to see you back again soon on Sweet and Good Torah. Freilich Purim.